welcome to this classroom if you haven't been here yet today. This is a masterclass in nonprofit fundraising led by Amanda Kraus, the Chief Executive Officer of U.S. Rowing, and we're super excited to have her here. Welcome, Amanda. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Jamie. Thanks for having me. Hi, everybody. It's so weird not being able to see anybody. But I'm, oh, thanks, Kaylee. So Kaylee's bringing up some slides for us, super helpful. Again, my name is Amanda Kraus, and I am the CEO of United States Rowing. So we're the governing body for the sport of rowing. And I'm actually just wrapping up week 5 at this job. And for 18 years leading up to this role, I was the founder and executive director of a nonprofit in New York City called Row New York. So we brought competitive rowing and academic support to young people in New York City. So when I started, I basically put $5 in a Chase checking account and, sort of asked everyone I knew to pitch in a little bit of money, and I built a board of directors. And we went from a really modest beginning to when I left, we had a $5 million operating budget. So I know all about starting from scratch and not knowing where to start and sort of learning along the way. So I'm here to give you sort of an overview on fundraising, and I'd like to make it interactive. So I think I get to ask you guys questions, and you can put your answers in the chat. But I guess my first question for you is, I'd love to know how people feel about fundraising. Can you guys chat? Are you allowed to write something? Yes. Oh, good. Thank you, Veronica. Okay. So if people can just start to enter some words when they think about fundraising, what comes to mind? Yeah, fundraising is hard. What else? And be honest. Don't enjoy it. Daunting. Sales. It is like sales. Anything else? Terrifying. Not my favorite. Awkward, difficult. Sounds like dating. Begging. No money, no mission. Awkward. Confusing. Yeah, this sounds about right. So one thing I left out was that I teach, I'm taking the fall off with this new job, but I teach fundraising at NYU here in New York at Wagner for graduate students. And this is the question I ask my students on the first day of the class. Like, what do you think about it? I make them write it on Post-it notes. How do you feel about it? And so these are all valid feelings, and I used to have them too. And I think it's important to just sort of talk about, just for a minute, like, why is it all these terrible things? So that's not a rhetorical question. Why is it hard and terrifying and awkward? Can you guys answer that? Uncomfortable. Talk about yourself and sell why they should give you money. Well, let's talk about that. Asking for money. Yeah. Fear of rejection. Oh, Latoya, really good one. Yep. You get used to a lot of rejection. Don't know where to begin. Yep. There's a loud dog behind me. Yep. What else? Why is it hard? Why is it scary? Why is it awkward? Yeah. Okay. Well, how do we feel about talking about money in this country? Do we talk about that? Yeah, right, Matt. Like, you're asking somebody to give their money away, right? So that's like one of the things we don't really talk about a lot. Like, don't discuss money at the dinner table, and people feel really awkward about it. So I'm hopeful in the short amount of time we have, I can make you feel better about fundraising. Yeah, what's in it for them? Right. Yeah, what are you going to get for giving that money? So hopefully in this amount of time, I can tell you, or I can hopefully move the needle a little bit, and all of you feeling better about fundraising, and then also give you some strategies to, how do you hit the ground running with fundraising? And the big reason I would say that you should feel better about fundraising, and let me find out where this slide is. Yeah, if you can go down past NextUp. Next slide, where it says, once you understand that people want to make, Kaylee, if you don't mind going to the next one. Or leave it on that one. Oh, thank you. Yeah. So the thing about fundraising is that people feel good when they do something for other people. Number one, they really do. And number two, you have to remember you're not asking for money for yourself. It's not about you, right? You're asking money for something that you believe in. And you think that the person you're asking money for, that they believe in it too, and they want to be supportive. Either because their kid's involved in the sport, or they played the sport, or they want to be, give back to the community, whatever it is, then that's really key. So I would love right now to get a sense of this audience and know, because I think what I talk about will be more or less helpful based on knowing where you're all coming from. So if people can start in the chat, just tell me, if you know your budget number, just put budget and what it is. Like, is it a $100,000 budget? Is there like no budget? You're just scraping out together some soccer balls where you can. Is it a $2 million operating budget? Throw it in the chat. 40,000, 135,000, 500,000. Yep, I've been in all of those levels. Million, been there. 3 million, 100K. Yeah, less than 100K. 3,000 kids. Okay, so that's on our larger end. 3 million is our sort of high end. We've got a lot of like 6-figure budgets. That's good. All right, Karen's getting going here. I like it. Okay, this is good. So do people have, and are the people in this group, are you responsible for doing some fundraising? Is that why you're here? Yes, yep. You're all like, yeah, why do you think we're here, Amanda? Right, because it's a fun thing to do on a Friday afternoon. New initiative, yes. Yeah, okay, great. So that's what ends up happening, right? When I started Row New York, I definitely did not think that such a huge part of my life would turn into fundraising. But for anyone who runs an organization, you quickly learn, if it's a nonprofit, that a huge part of what you do is raise money. Okay, so let's start talking about that, because again, we don't have a ton of time. So let's go to the next slide, slide 9, please, Kaylee. And we're going to talk about first, I would recommend that you should have a development plan. So what does that look like? Regardless of what size your organization is, you have to have a plan. So you want to just think about what are the possible revenue streams for a fundraising plan. Normally I would ask you all to tell me, but we don't have time, so I'm going to just tell you. So first, you can think about foundations, right? Those are organizations that exist to give money away. So are there foundations in your community, in your city, or wherever you live that are a good fit with the program that you're running? Then another good revenue stream, and I would say for you all, probably your best revenue stream are individuals. The next one is government. And then we can talk a little bit about fundraising events, okay? So you want to put together your plan, and in that plan, just come up with, okay, if I have to raise $100,000, what amount is going to come from where, right? And if you're a $3 million organization, this should be a much more comprehensive developed plan. If you're trying to raise $20,000, it's probably not going to take you that long. And you need to do your research, right? So go to the Foundation Center online, Google similar clubs doing work and see who their supporters are. And then you visit each foundation website and you see what are their guidelines, who do they support, okay? And then you can always write them a letter of inquiry, or you can call and say, hey, I'm running this basketball program, and I'm serving this number of kids from this community. I wonder if we'd be a good fit for what you're supporting. And remember, foundations exist to give their money away, so you should feel much less awkward about that. With individuals, the best context to raise money from individuals is this is a question. Let's see if you guys are paying attention. And it's okay if you get it wrong. Just give me answers. What's the best context in which to raise money from individuals? Well, there are a few good ones. Does anyone know? How do you raise money from individuals? I mean, you have to ask them, but does anyone know? People you know? Yes, David is right. So people give because they either they're interested in supporting the cause, or they're interested in supporting the person, right? My dad never gave money to Row New York because he cared about young people and rowing and academics. He gave money to Row New York because he cared about me. And that's an extreme example. But remember, the people who care about you will say yes, even if they don't care about like your youth golf league or, you know, whatever sport it is. Matt is exactly right. People who are already invested in your organization, those are the low-hanging fruit, right? Those are the people that you might be saying, hey, this person loves what we do, and they would probably want to be involved. The answer I was really most looking for is your board of directors. Does everyone here tell me yes or no? Do you work with a board of directors? Yes, 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 yes. Good. How many of you have who knows what a give-get is on a board of directors? Anyone? Does anyone know what a give-get is? Yes. What's a give-get? David's like, yeah, I know what it is, but we don't have one. Well, it's good. It's a good start. All right, I'm going to tell you guys, unless someone wants to tell us what a give-get is on a board. Or responsible for an amount. Yeah, Joe is right. Joe and Dave, you're right. Yeah. So a give-get is basically saying, you know, for the size of your organizations, I would say in average, maybe you should do a $5,000 give-get if you're a, you know, $1 million organization. And that is essentially, you either need to, as a board member, write a check for $5,000, or you can get your company to match your donation of $2,500, or you can get 10 people to give, can't do that kind of math, $500. The idea is, you know, you can't just sit on a board and not put some skin in the game, right? So you fundraise, they're expected to fundraise, they're expected to give or to get. And I'm personally going through that right now with the U.S. Rowing Board. Is, you know, they've never been asked to do that. So I'm not sure, maybe they're regretting hiring me at this point. So I would definitely recommend going back to your board of directors, even better, getting a seasoned executive director to do a presentation to your board, so it's not coming from you, and have them explain that this is a normal expectations of a board, and get them excited about it. This is not punitive, right? This is in order for the organization to be successful. So that's really important. And then, how do you implement give-get on a board when that wasn't part of the agreement when they were onboarded? Dave, excellent question. That is exactly what I'm going through right now. If anyone has the answer, you can tell me. My approach is, you know, if we want to be successful, if we want to support this organization, we all need to put some skin in the game. So I even led with, like, listen, you guys, I'm going to put in, you know, a modest donation to the organization, and it's in the beginning, it's not about the amount. I would say it's about, we want to have a culture of giving, that it's really important for external folks to see, wow, the board has some skin in the game. They're investing in this organization, and get them excited about it. Who's in? Get some people on the side who are going to lead the way, so it's not just coming from you. And then slowly but surely work to get to that give-get number. So I wouldn't walk in and say, I think we need a $5,000 give-get and we're starting tomorrow, right? Because you're going to get pushback and people are going to be like, that's not what I signed up for. So I would plant the seed, make it a really positive thing, you know, make it, you know, in the beginning, if it's a modest amount, and then plan to grow it from year to year. It's much easier, needless to say, if you start out with putting forward. At Row New York, it was a very clear, listen, there's a, I can't remember, $40,000, I think, give-get. And we turned a lot of people away because they would say, oh, that's too much for me, but better to know ahead of time, right? That that's not something they wanted to do. Okay, so with your development plan, you want to write out all the categories, the amount you think you can raise from each, and then ideally you have like a pipeline for each of those. So a pipeline is basically, well, if you say we're going to bring in $100,000 from individuals. Okay, that's great. Well, write out who those individuals are. You have to know, you know, okay, we're going to approach Bob Smith, Susan Smith, you know, we're going to approach X, Y, Z. What amount do you think you'll get from them? And then let's say you're going to get another $2,500 from a bunch of people giving $10. It's just a plan. It's a roadmap. So going back to individuals, let's say that you are in your community and somebody says, what sports do we have here? Throw out some sports people are representing. Yay, soccer. I have a soccer player, kid. Basketball, volleyball, hockey, fun. Ooh. Oh yeah, rowing. Baseball, flag football, more basketball. That's awesome. I'm going to choose flag football. So you, Veronica, meets somebody, has a board member who says, I really want you to meet so-and-so, you know, Kevin Smith. And he has so much money. He really wants to get involved with an organization. I think you should make an ask of him. Okay. So the thing is with raising money from individuals is there's an old adage, and I'm going to see again if you guys are paying attention. There's a number one reason that people don't give to organizations. They don't give to charity, organizations, nonprofits. Does anyone, wow, Joe, you're like an A student. Are you in the front row? Yes, that's right. The number one reason people don't give is because nobody asks them. I know that sounds really simple, but it's so important, right? People aren't sitting around between their kids and their jobs and working out and Netflix. They're not like, oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get online and find somewhere to donate my money. They're just not. Yes, I'm sure there's some people who do that, but it really is not at the top of their minds. So it's our jobs. Oh, Chris, you want to talk about that? How do you think COVID will affect fundraising? We're going to come back to that. I know we will. So you really need to make sure that you're making the asks of people, right? So Veronica's going to go meet this guy. Basically, do your research. Know what you can about him. What are his interests? Does he have kids? Where does he live? Did he play flag football? Does he have kids who play flag football? All those things. And when you go to meet with him, you want to make sure that you're really letting him direct the conversation, but you're making sure you're getting in everything you can about the program, right? All the reasons that it's a good thing, all the, you know, the outcomes, how much the kids enjoy it, how great the coaches are, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? Do you think you should be talking about yourself a lot or a little? Anyone? That's a good question. A little, right? 0, is that 0, Joe? A little, talk about the, yeah. Creates a little, yeah, Chad's right. Little to none. People aren't really that interested in other people. I mean, that's not fair. Often they are, but in this context, I would recommend getting people to talk about themselves. Get them to talk about themselves, and your job is to talk about the cause or the sport or the program, and you know, keep notes in. Melanie, that's a relief. Yeah, no one wants to hear about us. That's fine. So when you're talking to this person, take notes, right, in your head. And then for you larger organizations, you younger ones don't need to worry about this as much, even though if you can, I would. When you go back to your office or, you know, your home office, you want to capture all the notes from that meeting, right? What are the things you want to write down after you've met with Kevin? What's Veronica going to write down? This is a question. Joe, I know you're out there. What they care about, right? What's important to them, right? Exactly. What else? Yes, Matt, exactly. Who they are, personal details. Okay. So yeah, like gauge their interest, right? If it's very clear, like they have no interest in what you're doing, that's good to know, right? Mission alignment, right. Oh, you guys are good. Okay, so why? Why do you need to write that down? And also, where are you going to put it? So you're writing it down. Like, do you have Salesforce or anything? If you don't, put it in an Excel spreadsheet. It's okay. But why are you writing this stuff down? Are you like just journaling about this person? Yes, Matt, you're good. Right. Yeah, so Matt's exactly right. So that the next time that Veronica meets with Kevin, she can say, oh, you know, how's Bobby doing at Villanova? I know he was starting last fall. You know, that's really meaningful if you can remember something about people and their lives, right? And reference it. And Chad's right too. The handwritten thank you note, you know, in my mind will never go out of fashion. And I think that that's like an excellent thing to do, right? Is follow them up. You haven't asked Kevin for money, so what is your handwritten note doing? What are you thanking him for? Yes, his time. Right, their time. Right, good. Very, 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 very important. My NYU students are so tired of hearing me say it, but they've actually written to me years later and said, oh, thank you for teaching me this lesson. It's so important to say thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your advice. I mean, I still to this day, I have like 4 people to thank today. Really important. And like Dave's saying, you're building a relationship. So sponsored by, yeah, Chris is right. Making sure that they feel recognized, right? I was talking to a donor last night who wants to pay to have the national team, US national team tested for COVID. I said, oh, that's amazing. And then she said, oh, you can mention our name or not mention our name. And then I said, but we're happy to mention it. And she said, okay, well, that would be great, you know, because some people are very, you know, want to stay anonymous, and some people really are enthusiastic about letting the world know the good things that they're doing. So it's good to gauge that too and thank them publicly, because it's also leads to good peer pressure, right? That they'll see, oh, so-and-so is giving to this organization. Well, I want to be a part of that too. Okay. Let's go to nonprofit boards. In terms of, but before I go talk about nonprofit boards, I would point out, to go back to COVID, listen, this country is a disaster. I think we all know that right now, but there are still some people, thanks, Chris. There are still some people who are doing quite well, right? And there's some companies that are still doing quite well. So I would, you know, you just have to be strategic about who you ask for money. And don't be shy about it, and let them know, right, the struggles that your organization is having. Don't be shy about it. It's not your fault. It's not your organization's fault that we're living through a global pandemic. Let them know the direct effect that this pandemic is having on your athletes. You know, they can't practice. They're at home. They're stuck at home. Kids are gaining weight. Kids are losing social connection. Like, the list goes on and on and on. And then you're saying, and this is how you can help. People want to be helpful. I really do believe that. So in terms of your boards, I think we actually covered a lot of this, but you should train your board members to be fundraisers so they get comfortable in doing this. You want to supply them with promotional materials. You want to always be elevating your organization to the tops of their minds, because remember, like everyone else, they're struggling with other priorities too. Anything else with board members? Just being really clear, I think, about what the expectations are of them, right? They're there to serve the organization. And I think that as volunteers and as the board, they deserve a certain level of deference for sure, and responsiveness from our ends as staff members. And they're also responsible for the well-being of the organization. So ask them, guide them in that leadership role, manage up to them is what I would say. Okay, next slide is corporate funding. Has anyone had a lot of success with corporate funding and sponsorships? Yes, no, maybe? No. Little. Okay. Yeah. Here's what I would say. Don't waste your time. A little ugly. Okay, good, Jacob. They won't help lacrosse. That said, hey, support soccer. Yeah, I think there's some businesses and corporations that will do things, right? Like donate some food or maybe some Vic, value in kind. They'll donate some snacks, and for sure. I have found that it's very hard to be successful on that front. So I wouldn't put your limited development expert into that that hat. So, but there are certainly ways that you can engage corporate folks. I have heard that too about Dick's Sporting Goods. So that's a good thing. Doesn't help rowing, but I've heard that for other sports. Anyone get government funding? Do, yes. Oh, PPP, right. That's great. Direct apart PPP, yeah. So take PPP out of that's great about PPP, but just regular ongoing government funding. Oh, good. A lot of yeses. That's great. Nice. Listen, I think, yeah, how? It's a good question. It totally depends on where you are. And I will say that I don't know the landscape beyond New York City. So I'm probably not the person to talk about this. I would say what I've learned here in New York is that once you have it, it's hard to lose it, which is great. But getting it is quite laborious, and you almost need to have a staff position, a person who's dealing with all the paperwork and everything. So it's a bit of a mixed bag. I wouldn't advise against it, but I just don't know that it would be at the top of the list in terms of like the budgets you all are looking at. I would focus on individuals and events. And we actually didn't talk about events yet. Does anyone host events? Like a fundraising? I don't mean, yeah, fundraising events? Yes. Great. Good. Oh, a lot of you. Okay. So events are great. They are, what's not great about events? Let's be negative for a second. What's hard about events? Yes, David, there's so much work. There's so much time, too much work, time consuming. Well, yeah, COVID, yeah, not a good time. Don't have an event now. Takes a lot of time, costs money. Yeah. Okay. What's good about fundraising events? Money, community, yes, gets people together. Right. So obviously they raise money unless you do a really poor job of, you spend more than you make, but that's another issue. Exposure, right? Corey's exactly right. Networking. Yeah, so don't just think about your events as this opportunity to make money, even though they should absolutely be that. They're also this opportunity to highlight what your organization does, right? And invite the kids to come, honor somebody, put the spotlight on, a local politician who's been helpful or a family that's been big supporters, give out awards. Again, this is all post-COVID. What I would definitely recommend is creating a committee when you're running an event. So put together a group of 8 or 10 people who are going to be your committee. And when you commit, and the board should all be on that committee, so add another 8 or 10 people to that. And the event committee is charged with selling a certain number of tickets or tables, right? And so when you ask people to be on the committee, you're saying, listen, we're going to list you on the event materials, and we expect the committee members to sell X number of tickets or get people to come and buy tables. And of course, we expect you to come to the event too. And that's how you get, 10 people to get 200 people there. Otherwise, it's all on you, and you can't do it alone. So I would say that's my down and dirty event planning. You can do a silent auction. You can have a great speaker. And I think that takes time. I would say that when you move into a sit down dinner, you're entering a whole new realm of expense and complications, which are not necessarily a bad thing. But it's definitely more to take on than if you're doing a cocktail party or a ping pong tournament or something. So I would start with something more. If you're a younger, smaller organization, I wouldn't start with a sit down dinner. That would be my recommendation. Okay, next we're talking about communications and fundraising. Sorry, Kaylee, I'm like moving around on mine. Yeah, communications and fundraising. So how do you guys use, do you have someone on your staff who does communications, the organization? Yes, Daniel, yes. All in one here. Is it all Veronica? Me, one person show. Yes, I've also been that person. Yep. Okay. So what does a good communications person do for an organization? Anybody know? So we had a head of communications at Roe, New York. What did she do? What's their job? Anyone know? Yeah, exactly. They're creating content, right? They're the voice of the org. I always think of them as like, they're the storytellers of the organization, right? You could be running the best programs in the entire world and have kids having like this amazing, amazing experience, and the parents are so happy, right? And you're so happy because it's such a great program. At the end of the day, though, you need someone who's going to tell your story, right? And who's going to highlight it and who's going to shout from the rooftops, like, look at all these amazing things we're doing. They're going to get great pictures. They're going to put it up on social. They're going to retweet from other groups. They're going to, show the world how great your flag football group is, or your basketball group, or whatever sport it is. So I would say absolutely something worth investing in is a really good communications person. Who's going to do your print materials, who's going to help do some video, your website, all of those things. So next was communications and fundraising. I always say to my students at NYU that, you really want to be deliberate about your communications. So, again, I just started at US Rowing, and I'm like, oh my gosh, do we send an email every day, multiple times a day? So figure out what's your cadence, how often you're going to be in touch with people, what's your messaging, and be deliberate about that. I would say it's always good to balance out sort of the qualitative and the quantitative. So tell the story of your student athletes, and then also have your data that's backing up all the things that you're doing. How are you serving young people? How many, how many practices a week are you running? How many are going to college, or how many are playing that sport in college, or whatever your relevant data is. And then I always say this too, which is that you really want to use high quality visuals. So I think that, especially now that everyone has a phone and a camera, that it's just so easy to get good pictures. So make sure there's someone on the staff who's really thoughtful about the visuals that you connect with your fundraising materials, or any of your promotional materials. So they have a set of eyes on it. Like, is this a really good picture? And B, is this representing who we are? Because I've been surprised over the years where I've thought, wow, we have so many really good pictures. This is what we're putting on our holiday card, or this does not represent who we are. In terms of this picture, or it's not the best representation of who we are. So really make sure you have that person on your team looking at those materials, because I think that that's super important. The next slide is about evaluating our programs. How many of you do evaluations, like programmatic evaluations? Yes, just Joe. Eddie, yes. Anyone else? Yes, we do. Okay, good. Sort of. I like that. I know that feeling. Fail internally. Yeah, okay. So what do you use to evaluate your programs, your youth sports programs? Like, how do you know that you're doing a good job, or your coaches are doing a good job? Surveys, right? Surveys, growth, surveys. Survey families. Yeah, that's a good one. Right. Okay. So do you have retention? Right. That's good. Surveys and outside companies. Good. data, registration data. Is that right? I think that's registration data. So when you're sort of building up your program, I would say, well, and also there's a difference between measuring what you're doing. Like let me think of the right way to say this. Like there's a difference between, okay, we're reporting out on like, we serve 2,000 kids. Okay. But that's important to be able to show, but how are you showing what good you're doing with those 2,000 kids, right? That's a great start, the 2,000 kids. How are you moving the needle in their fitness, in their social emotional well-being, in their access to a mentor? Those are the things that funders are going to really want to be able to see. So I would suggest, if you're not already doing this, really mapping out what is a change we want to see in our young people, and then how are we going to measure it? So at Row New York, for example, we had a whole academic component. I know this is sports based, so we'll skip that for now. But we wanted to measure, among other things, fitness. So we wanted our young people to become more fit, right? So then you have to decide, well, how are you going to measure that? So we did BMI, we did a timed mile, and then we got the baseline, and then you measure it again halfway through the year, and then again. So you can really show and progress across the year. And you can also show the progress in conjunction with what coach these young people have. So you can see like, well, who's really excelling? Which groups are really excelling, which aren't? And then we also measured SEL, so social emotional learning and growth. So we measured confidence, sense of community, and teamwork. And we had rubrics for that and different ways to measure like kids gaining, let's say, confidence throughout the year with us. So whatever it is you choose to measure, you just have to make those choices and then map out how are you going to actually do the measurement. You share how you measure confidence. Yes. So obviously measuring social emotional growth is, dare I say, more challenging than measuring fitness, right? Because a timed mile is a timed mile. It's quantitative. For self-confidence, we had a whole list of two things: list of questions for the students. So the most simplest form was, okay, how do you feel about yourself? How do you feel when you walk into a room? When a coach asks you a question, are you comfortable answering it? Things like that to measure confidence. And then we had the coaches fill out a chart. So if Daniel was one of my novice rowers, a 9th grader, I would literally write out things that we learned. We didn't make these up, from counselors, like how you can measure confidence. So if Daniel walks in and never says hello, he never answers a question when the coaches ask a question, he gives up easily, you would get a lower score from the coach. Obviously this isn't shared. And then we measure if there's progress across the year. I'm really simplifying it, but it is definitely harder to measure, but I think it's important. Another thing I would really recommend in terms of, so surveys are great. I would involve the coaches in that feedback, because if anyone sees the growth in young athletes, it hopefully is the coaches will see that too. And then I would also use focus groups. So bring in an outside person to ask questions. Can anyone think of what you get out of a human being running a focus group versus just asking a question on a written survey? Yes, good, Daniel. Context, right. You can, yes, exactly, Jamie. Did Jenny tell you that? Yes, you can ask follow-ups. So for us, 1 year we asked the question, we would ask, I feel nervous on the water. And 1 year it came back to us that like the vast majority of Row New York kids said, yes, they felt nervous on the water. And I was sort of like, oh my goodness, this is not good. We need to do something about this. But then it was so helpful, which we did, but then it was so helpful to have a person running a focus group who could then say, hey, if you don't feel comfortable on the water, let's talk about that. Like, why? Like, Joe, what could make you feel more comfortable on the water? And then you get context, you get deeper answers to everything. Do we aggregate? We do aggregate, but we also look at the individuals. So we do both. So I think that was like a semester or part of a semester in 43 minutes. So we have like 5 minutes or so left for questions if people have any. I know that was pretty rushed and condensed, but it sounds like a lot of you already know what you're doing. Do people have any questions though? No questions. All right. Oh, do you get better results from your SEL movement or fitness movement? Better results or more positive results, Joe, is I guess my question. Donation ask wise. I'm trying to understand Joe's question first. Do you get better results? Oh, you mean for funders? Are they more interested in SEL or fitness? Okay. You guys might not like this. The answer is at Row New York, most of our funders were interested in our academic side, and they love that rowing is the hook. And then I'd say it was equal between SEL and fitness. I mean, they love that there was a sports component, but it was the academics that they most support. Where do you find these foundations of which you speak? I go to the Foundation Center. Well, I used to go to the Foundation Center library. But what I would say, Chris, depending on where you're located, look up similar nonprofits and see who's funding them. It's look on their 990s. A lot of them will list them on their website, and you'll see the same usual suspects. And then go to those, if it says like Rite Aid Foundation or Pinkerton Foundation, go to their website and see who they fund. Best way to initiate conversations with individuals, letter, cold call, etc. The best way is definitely, Matt, to find someone who knows them. So, if I really want to meet Chris Campbell, he's a billionaire, I'm going to spend a lot of time up front seeing if I can find somebody on our board or maybe the parent of a board member. Like, you just find somebody who knows Chris Campbell, right? And that's so much better and then you ask them to make the introduction. And if that doesn't work, I mean, I'd say it's equal a letter or a cold call, but ideally you find someone who knows the person. Oh, sorry, there were others. That's why it's sports-based youth development. Yeah. And anything that had to change marketing strategy to get families to donate to our scholarship fund. Oh, yeah. So Emily, I'm assuming this is for, this is to support the athletes who can't afford to be a part of the program. I think it's all about relationships. And so if you can identify some parents with means on the team, and I don't know the context here, and build a relationship with them and say, I'm looking for partners who can help me make this sport more accessible to young people in our community. Will you help me lead the way on this? Like, you have to find your allies, I would say. I know that's a simplified answer, but yeah, so I was you, Mandy, at one point, in terms of new to an area, don't have a large network. I think you need to go to everything you possibly can and meet as many people as you can and just keep asking where, your partners are out there somewhere and it's just finding them. I know that might sound sort of funny, but, if you're a hockey team, you just have to keep going to any sort of hockey event and asking, like, who should I know? And you can ask people that, right? Like, who should I make sure I know? Who would be interested in supporting this sport? And you're going to find those people. And then when they say, oh, it's blah, blah, blah. Oh my goodness, could I meet blah, blah, blah. You got to really sort of put yourself out there and you'll find your way to them. Okay. Any other resources, books you recommend for building fundraising skills? I don't have for evaluation metrics, I don't have a recommendation. I still love Writing for a Good Cause as a fundraising book. And the thing is, you guys, it's not rocket science. It's really just like building relationships, seeing where there's a good fit, asking people to be helpful, and saying thank you. That's it. Those are, people sort of overthink it, and then they also just don't do some of that basic stuff, but it's really important. Through programs, family, who's in your community, somebody knows I'm right. Chris is right. We would have a grant proposal. We would ask organizations, or do you do them as you apply? Sorry, Yassine, we have a grant proposals pre-written. People I think, have a common misconception, which is that if you're writing a grant proposal, you can just like copy and paste, and having done it for 7 years. Unfortunately, I don't recommend that. You really have to take the time. Certainly there's certain pieces you can copy and paste. Like this is what our program does. You can copy and paste that. But I think you really need, to look at what the foundation is asking you to provide, and then map it out and answer the questions that they're looking for. And you can hire people who will write grants, will write proposals and reports, but you don't need to be a phenomenal writer. You need to be like a clean writer. Clean as in, just be able to like form sentences and be convincing. You don't need to be like some amazing creative writer. And then, how do you recommend messaging what donations go to when you have registration with fees and you try and have fees at least cover direct program expenses but still need to fundraise? Oh, that's such a good question, Dave. So, oh, Benita, you're here. Yay. Okay. That's such a good question. For Dave, I would say I'm all about just being really transparent and saying, hey, listen, your fee of $100 is covering the costs of your child participating in our soccer program. This additional fee, or you can make it a, donation, if they only want to, you could make it, what's the word? Oh my goodness. You can make it optional. I would say just add it on if you want and say, this additional fee of $10 is our inclusion fee, or whatever you want to call it, which makes our program available to, 10 students, whatever the number is, a year, to cover the cost of them participating, because our organization believes deeply in making our sport accessible. Oh, but you had asked, have fees at least covered directly. Oh, I'm so sorry. You didn't ask about scholarships. You asked about overhead. Funny. We've been talking about that a lot at US Rowing. First, don't apologize for it. And second, you can say that the direct costs of this program are $100. There's a 10% or 20% administration fee that covers, insurance, legal fees, whatever it might be, occupancy. Thank you for supporting our ice skating program. I think that's fine. And if you're running a good business or nonprofit, you have to cover those fees. Don't ever apologize for them. Oh, thank you, Jenny. Oh, that's a good suggestion, Chris, like getting local people, doctors, etc. And yeah, make a big deal out of them, right? Like, that's so easy for us to do, is to, thank people from the rooftops. There's no cost associated with that. Veronica, right, no one size fits all for grant writing. Yeah, real estate people love contacts. You guys are so much fun. I wish we were all together. Some grants are very data-driven. Yes, cause-driven. Hi, Benita. Drop your questions in the chat since we're doing the drop off at 2:50. Oh God, prep for the next session. Okay, Maddie's keeping us in line. Can you do this? Can they do them, or does it have to do the entire group? Okay, I think we're getting kicked out here. You guys are amazing, and feel free to reach out if you ever want to. I'm at US Rowing. And thank you all a lot, and keep up the good work, and hopefully don't be so scared. You're doing good things.